Okay, and do we have everybody present then? Caleb? Yeah, okay, great. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Design Advisory Panel meeting for April 10th. And we'll get started with if I could have a motion to approve the agenda, unless anybody's got something to add to that agenda. Motion from Marta, seconder Angie, all in favor. Great. Okay, and Hector, if we could have your picture, that would help. Then I know what you're voting. Thank you.
I'm on favor. Just almost close to my house, so I can actually turn on my camera.
Oh, okay. You're on the road. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And we've got some minutes to approve for today as well from our March 27th meeting. Was there any concerns or issues about the minutes that anybody needs to address? No? Okay. So motion to approve the minutes as presented. Marta again, Angie seconder again, all in favor?
Approved. Yeah.
Approved. Great. Thank you. Okay. So we can proceed then. We've got two presentations this evening, and the first is for property on East Wellington Road, and Caleb Horn, the city planner, will introduce it for us. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The first item on the agenda is development permit number DP 1376 for 2090 East Wellington Road. This is for a data center, and the property was rezoned to allow data center in 2023. The zoning is high-tech industrial, I3, and the relevant design guidelines are the General Development Permit Area Design Guidelines. And there have been no variances requested as part of this development permit. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And who's presenting this evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Scott Mack. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, the developer of this site, as well. Joining me as well is Glenn Hill with DHK Architects and Chris Mitchley with Kinship Art Design Ecology, who did the landscape plan. Just a little bit of background for myself, and then I'll turn it over to Glenn and Chris to provide more context on the site plans related to the application. We've been working now with this client for approximately 4 years as they went through due diligence on the purchase of the property, and then through a rezoning process for these lands, which rezoned them to I3 high-tech industrial, and now through the development permit process. I have a couple of quick slides here and some sort of overall context, and then, like I said, I'll turn it over to Glenn and Chris. So if I'm able to share my screen.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. So for those not familiar with the history of this project, the subject site is located on the north side of East Wellington Road, just west of the Nanaimo Parkway. The site is highlighted on the map that you see on your screen, and is approximately 5.75 acres in area. It was previously two separately titled properties that have now been consolidated, and previously had two houses, one on each lot. One of which has now been removed under building permit last year. The remaining house, which was built in 1990, is intended to be retained on an interim basis as an accessory residential dwelling unit, which is a permitted use under the zoning. The surrounding land uses are a mix of industrial, community services, and rural residential. As you can see from the map, the surrounding area is still quite rural in nature, but I'm going to speak to the fact that that is likely to change over the coming years. The site is also just west of the Cavalotti Lodge and AJ Forsyth, which is a metal fabrication company. As I mentioned, most of the surrounding context appears quite rural. But this is an area that is likely to transition quite significantly over the coming years. All of the lands surrounding the site to the east, west, and north are all designated for industrial development in city plan, some of which is already zoned for industrial, but there's a large section that is not. These lands have been identified for industrial for many years. They were also included with the industrial designation in the 2008 OCP. As noted, the property was rezoned in 2023, and of course, council supported that largely based on that industrial land use designation. Of note, the owner of the 60 acres to the west and north of this site has also submitted their own rezoning application for industrial zoning as well, and the city is in the process of reviewing that application. In addition, the Cavallati Lodge site is now also actively under development application for both subdivision and building permit as well. The rezoning, of course, for my client's property was predicated on this specific proposal in order to construct a data center facility. Approval of the rezoning included a number of development-related conditions and commitments, and there are three in particular that I just wanted to touch on quickly. The first one was in relation to road networking. Sorry, wrong slide here. So this is a much earlier version of the overall site plan, which has obviously been refined. It is different than what you have in your package in front of you, but I wanted to show it in the context of the road networking, because essentially what the city has done is identified in the OCP the desire in the long term for a connecting road between East Wellington Road and the Nanaimo Parkway at the Northfield intersection. And essentially that would be sort of the main collector road that would feed this entire 80 to 100 acres of industrial lands. So when we went through our rezoning process, it hadn't yet been determined exactly where that road is going to be located. But it was known that it was likely to either be basically on the western boundary of my client's site or on the eastern boundary. And so what we did through our process was demonstrate and also covenant sections of our property to protect for either that eastern road connection or the western road connection when the city makes a determination on where that will be. Yeah, and so as you can see, in addition to that, wherever that connection ends up being, the intent at this point from the city standpoint was to have a roundabout. So again, it would either be sort of at the southwest corner of the site or at the southeast corner of the site. The second commitment was in relation to tree protection. So through the rezoning process, there was a request and an agreement from the owner to protect 20% of the site, 20% of the existing trees and the existing vegetation. And so we've identified that in the plans that you have in front of you, essentially in the northern and northeast portions of the site. This was where the majority of the mature vegetation was located. There are also a number of Gary Oaks scattered throughout this portion of the site. And there is a portion of a small wetland and a small isolated wetland that is also sort of on the eastern property boundary. And so that's been incorporated into our site planning. And then third, through the rezoning process, we heard from residents to the south of the site that had concerns and questions about potential noise issues. In order to address this, the owner agreed at the rezoning to engage an acoustical engineer in order to review and provide recommendations at time development on how we could mitigate any potential noise issues. The study was completed and provided to the city with our application. The work that was done by the acoustical engineer also informed the design process in terms of the design, location, and visual and acoustic buffering for rooftop HVAC and cooling equipment. The result of these changes helped to create a significant reduction in the anticipated noise levels at and for the surrounding properties, essentially bringing it down to very close or at the existing ambient levels. Of course, as most of you are probably aware, the site is quite close to the Nanaimo Parkway, so there is a relatively high ambient noise level that exists already at the site because of the proximity to the highway. Just a final point before I pass it off, just in discussions with staff, we're aware that one of the significant questions from staff and potentially from the committee relates to phasing. The building itself contains 10 distinct modules. The expectation is that these modules will be built on a phased basis, most likely one, potentially two at a time. In terms of the overall site, the intention is to only develop those portions of the site that are required for a given phase or for the next module. And so we would not be going in and clearing and grading the entire site at phase one. Rather, we would only clear and grade what is necessary to service phase one, and then move forward sort of incrementally on that basis. So the impact on the site is not so substantial, given that it may be a number of years for the building to be built out and for the phasing to occur. The phasing, of course, is based ultimately on market demand for the facility, as well as the capacity and ability for BC Hydro to provide electricity based on their existing network. On that note, I'll pass it over to Glenn, who I believe is going to speak just briefly to the building design.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Glenn from DHK Architects. We've been working with Scott and our landscape architect and the owner over the past little bit, and be happy to sort of do a quick share through the design to date. So if you can all see my screen, I think we're ready to go. Maybe a little bit of overlap with Scott, but essentially this is the data center. Phase one or block one will be the primary pedestrian staff orientated module that has program in there which has reception, meeting areas, part of the business end of it, and then for the majority, the remainder of the blocks are containers for the equipment and the necessary data collection and hosting. So just as a quick review of the site, so this is the house that is gone. This is the existing house that's going to remain until such time as it has to go in order to the site to receive future phases. At this point, I'll just do a quick, secondary to Scott's review of the site. You can see that East Wellington is sort of well connected this way. The future roads will be heading out this way and connecting to the north, but this is the Boxwood industrial area. This is the remainder industrial zones along East Wellington. And then our property is located right in here. There is a sort of a small escarpment park area and then reserved agricultural reserve lands here. So yeah, we're flanking residential on the south, proposed and future industrial to the north. Our site plan here illustrates the 10 modules as we've sort of seen in the previous diagram. This just sort of gives some quick street context, relatively underutilized across the street frontage at the moment, but as we know, development and rezoning proposals are in place. So this is the Forsyth building here, just down the road from us. So our site plan currently this is the full build out illustrating the 10 modules. Block one is located in the southeast corner. We have a temporary access off of East Wellington that through future development may be shifted around to the new access road here. As future phases come online, the associated parking required for the size and the volume of the building will sort of be added on as things go, as Scott mentioned, the north end of the site being protected and the wetland being protected as well. This is a quick illustration of a sort of a look into the future with what future phases could potentially look like. This is the south elevation on East Wellington, sort of stripping away any kind of frontage screening and landscaping to show that building one here, module one, is the one that has the primary entry, has the waiting reception areas, has the boardroom meeting offices on the second level, has other meeting spaces and business related stuff, primary exit and entry doors, a large covered canopy, and other exit ways. So the majority of any public relation, any staff interaction in and out of the primary building would be across this frontage here. The second block is an illustration of how we've kind of taken a play of materials and sort of decanted that across the other blocks, which are mostly going to be insular in their necessity. Obviously, climate control and dust and air is important. So they're fairly insular buildings, but wherever we have emergency exits, stairwells, and light wells, we've tried to introduce some daylight into these spaces, and that is then reflected on the exterior with overhangs over doorways, awnings over doorways, and then a sort of a gesture of the two primary materials continuing around the building with the other colorful, playful panel integrated into that in and around zones where people may be coming and going. This elevation illustrates the east side. So again, block 1 is the one that is highly articulated. We've got bike areas and parking happening along here. Block 4 here would be slightly different to the others because it would likely be have one of the primary loading areas, and so you'll see back in our site plan that's illustrated. The future phase blocks again, where there's an opportunity to put some daylight and create some windows and articulation. We've done that by sprinkling the articulated metal panel material to accent those areas around what is largely an enclosed building. You can also see down here, this is looking backward. These elevations are, the parapets are articulated upward to create that solid buffer. These are the rooftop units on top of the chiller rooms that are on the upper floors. So from East Wellington, where the residential neighborhood or the residential sites are on the other side, we've kind of continued up the walls as part of that acoustic abatement to kind of spill that sound out onto East Wellington and to the south of the property. Moving quickly into just illustrating then what building block 1 would be. This is our 30-meter by 30-meter module, 2-story building. And we have entryways coming in. We've got temporary loading illustrated in the proposed parking and driveways that would associate the first phase. We've got garbage located at the back of the driveway, and then as future road comes in, we would have entryways and secondary or primary future entries in and out of the building, which would then network around the whole of the site. This is mostly for additional parking, fire truck access in and around all of the parts of the building. So building 1 would stand here. It's the one that houses most of the staff oriented areas. Just very quickly, I will sort of illustrate that this entire front of the of block 1 is where the primary entry is, the waiting area, reception rooms, and other office spaces are. So we've taken that as the guiding factor for creating a highly articulated architectural feature that frames the upper office spaces, frames glazing for the reception and the entry areas. The primary entry is covered by a large canopy that flies over, and we have other entries coming out of that's primary entry, secondary entry coming out of the stairwell, elevators, other meeting rooms on the second floor, and then our array of materiality to kind of express that articulation on the primary frontage. Turning around the building to the side, this awning continues around the side. We've got bicycle parking along here close to the entryway, and then other areas where we can pop windows into the second floor. We've done that, and we've articulated that with angled canopies that would create deep shadow lines on the facade of the building. And then where we have needed to, we've extended parapets further up to hide all of the rooftop equipment. The two temporary, semi-temporary elevations take our primary metal material and sort of continue the other two facades. Again, where we have entryways, we've applied a canopy. Where we have stairwells, we've included windows and glazing and a little bit of articulation to do what we can to kind of bring some relief to those larger facades. Our materiality, so our large articulated features, our metal panel with another colorful pressed metal panel as part of the elevations materials. We've introduced a wood look metal panel to accent, and we've also considered putting some low voltage LED lighting just to kind of create a little bit more animation on the building. In general, this data center typology wants to be very quiet and discreet. Security is paramount, and so we were giving a little bit of latitude to express the building, and but without being overly overly kind of expressive with the entire building. So this just illustrates the types of materials. We got metal storefront, the wood look metal, which we would accent with lighting, and then a light and a dark metal panel, and then our colorful pixelated banding color in metal panel as well. These final renderings just sort of show you how we're trying to make the focal part of the building the first module, the primary entryway. So wayfinding is sort of brought by lighting, overhangs, easy access from parking onto a sidewalk plaza strip to the front door, and then reception areas are transparent to an extent. This sort of shows how we pulled some of the architectural elements out to create those articulations and had those deep canopies for covered entryways, etc. So with that, I will pass it on to Chris to express some of those fantastic strategies for landscape design.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to share my screen quickly as well. I hope this is the right one. You can see a PDF. Yes, excellent. Okay. So firstly, just the general approach to the landscape is to draw inspiration from the opportunity to really integrate industrial facilities and functional ecosystems. So as you've seen through Glenn's presentation, there are some ephemeral wetlands on the site. So we treat those, take our cues from that to start to try to integrate nature-based solutions onto the site. So to really influence the character. And you can see sort of the end of a swale and rain garden here on the the west side of the site on this particular sheet, which is the southern half of the landscape plan. Here's the block one that both Scott and Glenn referred to as the first development. And so for our landscape plans, what we see is the full build out. And so just to take under advisement that as the phasing progresses, the approach, and I think it's been suggested by both Scott and Glenn, is that it would be essentially to leave the site in a natural state. No sense in doing anything on a site that's going to change. It's already largely a Gary Oak kind of forested space. So leaving that intact and only implementing the landscape design as is required for the module as they come online. On the site itself is 2.3 hectares roughly, which requires us to put in basically 230 replacement trees. Again, looking along the front facade here, you can see how we're achieving, in fact, more than 230 trees. Although some of we are proposing to include arbutus trees because they're naturally occurring there, but are not really regarded as replacement trees because of their sensitivity to establishment. Also, as suggested by Glenn, so just to look at the second page of the of the site. I'm hoping you can see that now, the northern half. That really what you can highlight, what we can see there at full build out is that tree protection area, which comprises about 20% of the total site area. So that is as required, and even accounting for that space, we've managed to fill in quite a lot of trees around the perimeter of the roadway and the building. Again, screening the facility as to the extent that we can in the space that we have, but also contributing to that functional habitat. Also, going back to the front of the building, one thing that we've tried to accommodate in association with that first block is a little outdoor gathering space for staff who might be there. There's a bike storage meeting the requirements for the facility, and potential connections out to this eastern side access point. Some timber benches where people could gather, hang out, wait, take their break, what have you. And that's primarily, like I said, in association with the staff dominated block of the site. I'm going to switch to the details for a moment. As Glenn hinted, that security is a prime concern. So, well, sorry, across the front of the along the East Wellington streetscape at the front facade of the building, we're proposing a perforated metal sheet metal panel on a concrete wall, and that is intended to accentuate the character that was described for the architectural facade, that pixelated look, matching the colors, that sort of thing. As you go around the perimeter of the site, we're proposing a chain link fence with barbed wire on top. And that is primarily for the security, the necessities of the site. It's permitted in industrial use, and we've received feedback from staff to take a look at that. We're looking at ways to mitigate the character of the barbed wire, particularly on any public adjacent road. But again, reiterating that security is a really high priority for the site. Another of the staff comments that we heard related to lighting. So I haven't shown lighting on our landscape plans. So firstly, the predominant lighting of the site will be through building mounted fixtures. We are going to, just in consideration of those comments, to look at opportunities for low level lighting to illuminate sort of that front parking area as well, without casting light to the neighbors and that sort of thing. So very much dark sky compliant, downward facing lighting as it's needed. You can see some significant blank areas here, and that's in that covenanted areas that Scott hinted at before as the site goes through the negotiation of where the roads might end up. So these as a covenanted space, we wouldn't be proposing either fencing or trees in those areas, but certainly would provide a Gary Oak meadow kind of scenario, just in keeping with the existing ecology of the area, and also because it's relatively easy to deal with if that area has to change in the future. I think I could probably leave it at that and stop sharing my screen. There we go. And leave it to the panel for whatever questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, excellent, great. Okay, so before we get around to doing our feedback, is there any panel members like to ask any questions of staff or have the applicant clarify any points? Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, a question for staff. With those future road connections to Northfield, do you have like a rough idea on the timeline for that? Is that like 5-year, 10-year, 20-year kind of thing?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, that is largely under the ownership of a single property owner. There are two large properties between this site and effectively the intersection of Northfield Road and the Nanaimo Parkway. So that property owner does have a rezoning application submitted right now. When it is actually dedicated would likely not be until they actually come in to subdivide. and we anticipate that could even be a phased subdivision. So it would be at the owner of those properties timing when they would actually dedicate that road.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Marta?
I have several. In terms of design, has the city reviewed this project with the municipal waste processing facility? These types of projects for data centers create e-waste after, so the processors that are involved need to be swapped out once in a while. So do we have the capacity? Were they part of the process in any way?
Yes, through the chair, that's a good question. Right now, this project is under a technical review for internal departments, so it has been referred to our engineering departments and environmental departments. So yes, I think there are a few questions of this matter that we are looking at, but I don't have an answer for you today on what the e-waste implications would be.
Okay, and have you had a chance to reach out to the Chief Fire Prevention Officer to see how they would deal with a fire that should take place at a data center? Because it's a unique condition, right? Very unique condition to what we have, and so design considerations need to be taken place. Maybe additional road space or clearances that we might not be aware of.
Yes, thank you. That is as well a part of the technical review that is ongoing. I know there is a fire flow demand for this type of project, but I believe there also are some unique fire suppression mechanisms. So I'm not sure through the chair if it would be appropriate. It may be best for the applicant to respond to any fire suppression items, and I'm not sure if you're a civil engineer or if you have that available.
Caleb, I can speak to that. Unfortunately, Braden wasn't able to attend tonight, but I'm certainly able to take a stab at that. You're correct. At the end of the day, obviously the city has an expectation, a requirement around fire flows, which we have been, through our civil engineer, we've been able to demonstrate that we are able to meet. Only portions of the building would actually be protected through conventional water fire suppression methods. Significant portions of the building would be protected through alternative means that are chemical based, essentially, in order to protect the integrity of the electrical equipment. So that all of that has been the ability to service it has been confirmed, and then the details of what that actually looks like would be fleshed out through the building permit design process. In addition to that, outside of the building, while we're not anticipating that it would be required, we do have essentially an internal road that circulates around approximately 75% of the building. So from an access standpoint, we've sort of gone over and above in terms of ability to get to different points of the building. And all of that circulation has been designed in consideration of the city's engineering requirements around emergency vehicle and fire truck access.
Okay, and then the question about parking stalls. I know we have 90 that are, would the city be willing to reduce the amount and kind of recommend a lowered amount in light of the fact that there's going to be hardly any people working there?
Yes, thank you. The conversation around parking hasn't come up too much to this point. I know we did review it at the time of rezoning and recognize the fact that we don't have in our parking bylaw a perfect match for this use, and we're looking at the next best fit, which is warehousing, which we do have in our parking bylaw. So the applicant has not proposed any parking variance, and to my knowledge, I'm not sure if they're interested in even exploring that option.
Maybe if I can just quickly speak to that. Certainly, we would be happy to provide less parking. We certainly don't believe that the actual need is going to match. As Caleb said, we essentially found what at this point is sort of the lowest ratio for parking requirements based on square footage. but we were cognizant of and preferring not to bring forward something with a variance, and therefore we were able to come up with a plan that did meet the requirements as per the bylaw, the way the bylaw reads today.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Great, thanks, Marta. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, not seeing any, and actually you answered one of mine. I was going to ask about how many, maybe I'll just ask the applicant, how many staff would at any given time be working in that building?
So generally speaking, at full build out, the anticipated total number of employees would be somewhere in the order of approximately 100. But generally speaking, there wouldn't likely be any more than about 20 employees on the site at any given time.
Okay.
So the need, the demand for parking is certainly likely quite low. And of course, there's essentially very little, if any, visitor parking, right?
Yeah, so I thought you don't have, it's not a shop where people are going to drive up to.
Yeah, it would be the odd client visit, that sort of thing. But it's obviously not a facility that's going to, that members of the public or people in the community are going to visit or attend to at any point, right?
Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead, Marta.
Sorry, just a follow-up question to that. Will there be any job opportunities for people from Nanaimo in this building? Just if we're, having spots for staff.
I suspect that there would be. I mean, obviously, that's a better question for the owner. Obviously, and presumably, there would be a certain skill set and education background that would be required to work in this type of facility. But I'm not aware of anything that would preclude the City of Nanaimo residents from ultimately being employed in the facility.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask about the fence?
Yes, go ahead.
I can't tell if I'm interpreting the drawings correctly or not, that there's like a fence bisecting that wetland.
You're reading that correctly.
What?
So it's interesting. We did have a lot of conversations about the fencing around the perimeter of the site. So there was some ecological studies done early on in the process, identifying that as an ephemeral wetland that's not connected to fish habitat and doesn't provide any connectivity to other water courses or anything like that. And so the choice was to proceed. We have received feedback to take another look at that in staff comments. And so we've had some early discussions between ourselves around how we might avoid that and simply just go around the wetland with the fencing.
Okay.
If I can just add to that quickly, the lands directly to the east, which is essentially a panhandle, a 20-meter wide panhandle that opens up into a much larger property to the north. There is effectively a driveway, quasi road, informal road that crosses that wetland at this point, and so that fence would essentially be sort of along the edge of that driveway that crosses the wetland, and of course, certainly understand the potential questions and concerns around that. The concern on our end is, of course, generally speaking, security for the facility is important. Specific to the actual nature of the use, but beyond that, more broadly, just security in general obviously has become a much more significant concern for everybody, for all properties in the city, with issues around homelessness. There's a homeless camp either on or just to the north of the property at present, and so there was concern about leaving, essentially any portion of the site open or potentially accessible. And in this case, the wetland, while right now it is wet and therefore not likely particularly usable or accessible, it is dry. It's bone dry for at least half of the year and certainly through the summer months. And so, the potential for security issues related to that was sort of the basis or the rationale for why we were trying to look at what we might be able to do there to increase the security and decrease the potential risk.
Okay, that's a lot of things, but I heard that you're looking at going around the wetland, and I think that's, yeah, it should be on the edge of the parking lot and not going through the wetland. That was a lot of excuses around security, and you could just put the fence closer to the actual building and not bisect a wetland. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. Jonathan?
Just following up on that, from my interpretation of the drawing, it's showing a fence along the perimeter of the wetland and across the wetland. So in that case, there's double fencing there, which to me seems completely unnecessary, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, and Marta again?
Sorry, one more question. Does the design team or the city know what kind of data center this is? And just bear with me, it is a design question. I understand that this impacts the power consumption. So with AI data processing or crypto mining, it can double or more the energy demand of like cloud data storage, for example. The reason I ask is because the design of this is really important in terms of acoustical and energy implications, and I'm wondering if the mechanical engineer and the acoustical engineer are aware of whether or not what type of data center this is.
To answer that, applicant? Caleb?
I'll take a stab at it. So the intent, the owner currently operates a facility in Hong Kong, and their client base at this point tend to be government agencies, insurance companies, banks. So the discussions that I've been involved at this point, that there is no intent or relationship to AI or to crypto or data mining or anything of that nature. They tend to be, like I said, larger financial and government organizations.
Okay, thank you.
I did have one question to staff. The residential buildings to the south across the road, is there future plans to make that area also industrial? Or is it going to be retained as residential?
Yes, so those properties on the south side of East Wellington Road are not in the light industrial designation, which is on the north side of East Wellington Road. So those properties, I'm just checking here, are in fact in the suburban neighborhood designation.
Okay, so at this point, there's no plans to change that designation at all. Okay. And okay, I guess we should just get on here and have a panel give their feedback. Marta, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so with the amount of energy demand, and I'm understanding that you're not clear, but you're working with the understanding that it's the lower energy demand. I'm wondering to help the city out and mitigate costs for the public, whether or not you have considered doing some solar panels on the site.
So I can speak to that. Actually, before I answer that, but it is related. The owner just sent me a note because, of course, he's listening and attending the meeting as well. He confirmed that they have committed in their negotiations with BC Hydro that there would not be any data mining because of the increased power demand.
Okay, thank you for confirming that.
That is not part of the plan. With regard to solar, certainly we've had a lot of discussions given the nature of the use. Obviously, the HVAC and the mechanical systems are a significant component of the building. The rooftop in this case is quite busy already, given the extensive facilities already required. We haven't. The focus has been primarily on, from a mechanical standpoint at this point, because of course typically with most buildings you wouldn't get into detailed mechanical design until the building permit stage. But again, given the nature of the use, we've had to at least start down that path. And so we haven't, in terms of actual the potential or the possibility for power generation on the roof. We haven't looked in detail on that, but it's certainly something that certainly could be considered at the building permit stage.
Yeah, so I'm also wondering if you had considered, because this is something that we had considered at YVR when we were looking at their utility building. They had, you know, substantial energy requirements as well. We were looking at putting some of the noisier equipment inside of the building, so you can actually have a floor that's vented, maybe on the lower floor, and then you can put it partially underground and have it fully vented out, and just to mitigate the sound furthermore. Is that something that was considered in the design process?
Yes, short answer is yes. Maybe not in quite the same way that you just mentioned, but there are significant elements of the mechanical systems that will be enclosed within buildings, primarily on the rooftop, not necessarily below grade. But they will be enclosed rather than exposed and open to the air, which again came through that part of that came through the work that we did with the acoustical engineer, and it had a significant impact, beneficial impact, obviously, on the anticipated decibel ratings.
What was the reduction in decibels that you were able to?
I believe it varied depending on different variables, but generally it was in the 4 to 5 decibel reduction from what it would have been without any of the mitigative efforts.
Okay, so from what I've heard is that some of these centers can produce some of them can go as high as 90 or even above that. So that's like a chainsaw constantly going. So 4 or 5 decibels, do you think that's sufficient with the design that's in place? Maybe something below grade would be more suited to reducing the noise. Has that been looked into?
So a key piece of the acoustical process was, of course, there's the source noise. There's the decibel reading at the source, so at the rooftop equipment, and then of course there are the readings or the what it sounds like when it gets to certain receptors, right? And obviously in this case, the key consideration, the key concern was the existing homes to the south. At this point, there's essentially nothing to the west, the Cavallati Lodge, which is an institutional use, to the east, and nothing to the north. So that was less of a concern. And of course, those areas are intended to be industrial. So there was also less of a concern from that standpoint. So really our focus was on, given the proximity to those existing houses to the south, what can we do to mitigate the potential noise, as it travels and reduces as it leaves the site and gets to those houses. And by the time the work that we did demonstrated that with the mitigative efforts in place, that the ambient noise levels are very close to what they already are today because of the existing background noise with the parkway.
Yeah, so do you remember what that was, more or less?
I believe they are, it varies. There was a reading, there was an overnight or a nighttime reading and a daytime reading. Mm-hmm. It was obviously a little bit quieter at the nighttime, and of course the expectation would be that it's a little bit quieter, as that's when most people are sleeping. I want to say it was for nighttime it was low mid 40s, and in the daytime it was low mid 50s.
Okay.
Staff have a copy of the acoustic report, which has all that information as well.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. I wanted to thank you for the road networking efforts that you guys put together. I think that's an important connector road for the city and connecting to a multitude of industrial properties, so that's very useful. I wanted to, I think the metal panel is a good durable choice for what's there. A landscape, I think wildflowers and Gary Oaks as a landscape is a wonderful, just simple solution and choice for this space. I wanted to kind of extend on that a little bit. We know these types of buildings use a lot of water for cooling. I know the Tesla factory, I've heard recently that the Tesla factory in Germany, they recirculate their water for cooling. Is that something that we're able to do, or is this going to rely on our potable water for cooling?
It is a recirculation system, so the water usage is actually relatively low. In fact, I believe we did at the rezoning stage, we did a comparison for had the property been developed for low density residential use, which was some of the surrounding zoning previously, and it was essentially comparable to what a comparable amount of low density residential development would have utilized.
Okay. The reason I ask is because we have such a huge roof surface. It could be a good potential surface for water collection and storage. Another thing that I wanted to ask in terms of storage, e-waste, is there a location on site where we store it? I know processors and drives in data centers have a lifespan, and they're known to be quite toxic. And so I'm not sure how long the equipment lasts, and is there a safe place to store it, or does it get shipped away somewhere for processing? I don't know what design solutions we have in place for that.
There is a fairly significant in block number 4, and acknowledging that it's not going to be developed with the initial phases. It's the 4th block to come online. There is a fairly significant loading and storage area. But generally speaking, the intent would be to, as equipment became redundant or no longer operational, it would be moved out as new equipment was moved in.
But but we don't know where it's going, right? So the landfill is gonna have to take care of that, or is it gonna is there a contract with some other municipality or some other country far away that will take this? It's a large building, right? It's a lot of electronics that get swapped out all the time, especially if it's storage. They don't last super long. You have to swap them out.
Fair enough. I'll be honest, I don't that sort of level of our operational detail. I haven't been involved in discussions around that.
Yep.
At this point.
Sorry. In terms of, so if not water collection on the roof, I really do appreciate, and it gave me an idea with the landscaping, with what Kinship had done, maybe a green roof, since it's so large, and with the combination of the wildflowers that they were proposing and maybe putting them on the roof, maybe we could do or consider a pollinator environment. You could create like a network of housing for bees, just something to help the ecology in one way.
So I think, and maybe I'll ask Glenn when I finish here, maybe Glenn can add to this a little bit as well, but I think the concern there would be twofold. Number one, philosophically, I'm a proponent of green roofs as well. I know there would be concern from an operational standpoint, just given the potential risks that come with that. Secondly, from a design standpoint, the roof on this particular building on each module is quite complex and quite variable because of the significant amount of mechanical and HVAC and cooling equipment that is going to be located on the roof. And so I'm not sure that functionally that would be viable. Glenn, I don't know if you can add on that or if you would agree or disagree with that, but I'm just not sure that functionally it would be viable in it, as opposed to say a building like Walmart, which is obviously 98% just basic roof with a little bit of a much more simple mechanical system taking up a much smaller proportion of the roof, right?
Yeah. It's I'm just sort of glancing at the plan, the schematic plans that were submitted as part of the development permit, and the roof plan has a sort of significant plant rooms on top. The roof system is obviously going to have to be accessed for maintenance and regular kind of inspections and stuff. I appreciate the sort of the idea of introducing something organic to a relatively inorganic industrial building. I'm sure an extensive green roof, some of them are relatively light. I just don't know how, and I couldn't speak to it right now about what level of insurance or acceptability there would be to kind of be adding elements like that. At this point, it would it's certainly, you've raised the comment and asked the question, so likely going to be something that's going to require a response at some point. So right now, I couldn't confirm or not whether or not that's something that would be tolerable given the nature of the building and the sensitivity of the equipment right below it.
I guess the other, if I could just add quickly, just the other quick comment I would make is from a general broader environmental perspective. Certainly, we feel that the commitment to protecting 20% of the site with its existing vegetation, existing mature trees, and canopy cover is a fairly significant commitment in and of itself. Certainly, there would be very few, if any, other industrial sites that I'm aware of in the city and I'm aware where 20% of the natural condition is being retained. As is recognizing those are two different issues, but it is part of that broader sort of overall commitment to environmental considerations.
All right. Well, this is an unprecedented type of project for the city. It's not a typical industrial building. It is extremely intense in resources. So 20% of the site, I don't know. That doesn't seem like enough to me. Yeah, I think we could do better in high-rise buildings. They put pools on the top floor. I think there is a way to do it. Certainly, there will be examples of green roofs put in very sensitive buildings. So I think that's a very reasonable request at minimum. I think I think this project is, because of how intensive it is in terms of resources, it owes a bit of a debt to the community for those resources. So it should make design choices as much as they can to benefit the community. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all those questions, Marta. That's good. Angie, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, yeah, well, I'll start by just thanks for the presentation and for going through the details with us. It is a unique facility, so it's helpful to kind of go through all of these different pieces, and the phasing is a little bit complex here, so it's helpful to kind of see how Block 1 will look compared to the full build out. I really liked that the entrance is well defined, and I actually really like the color palette that was used as well. It's really nice to see a bit of a pop of color without being too intrusive. I think it's still, subtle enough. So that's really nice. One question I had about the facades, you mentioned the two facades that will be become interior partitions. And I'm wondering if the materials that are used there are expected to be removed once those become interior partitions, and if there's an opportunity to reuse those on future portions of the building, and how maybe that's being considered for kind of deconstruction design at the same time as original construction.
Yeah, we have. There has been discussion around the utilization of panel materials that have the capacity to be fixed and reused, finding that product will be part of the ongoing research, because when new portions or next blocks come and attach, we'll be creating sort of internal exit corridors that all interconnect with each other, and they would be accesses to the multiple exits that are going to be required. So we would like to be able to, if possible, utilize what we can or reuse what we can, and finding a panel system that's going to be, can tolerate at least a kind of a singular or a secondary reuse is something that we would want to try and explore as best as we can. I know that some panel systems really can't be screwed and unscrewed too many times. And certainly with some metal panels that can happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
Yeah, I
it's
think
it's a good question about the sort of what do we do with them? Otherwise, we end up essentially with exterior materials being the corridor finish materials whenever the next add-on comes along.
yeah, and
The sort of one benefit of it is if it ended up staying, it is one less facade that gets added to the next building, so to speak. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just I think it's something kind of it's helpful to kind of think about it early on and how, depending on the timeline overall. I know it's a bit unknown now to be determined by the market, but how the build out happens, if current materials will be available in the future and how those kind of blend together and if there's an opportunity. I think there's a fair bit of variation in the color palette, so that's always helpful when with phasing, I think, to try to, if things do change, there's still opportunity to kind of pull in different materials and colors. It's not, one solid block or anything. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to kind of make that phasing work. And if there's an opportunity to make design decisions now that will allow for recyclability of those materials, that would be a great benefit, I think. And I think a lot of questions, have already been clarified. I was curious which portion, or if the whole parkade or the whole parking area will be installed in the first phase, or how that phasing might work.
I can speak to that. The intent there would be, as we talked about earlier, the building itself is likely to be developed in multiple phases, perhaps even module by module. But just the economies of scale, it doesn't make sense to have to add a little bit of infrastructure with each module to add 9 more parking stalls. Conversely, we also don't want to overbuild and build everything up front. And so the intent with things like the parking would be to do that in a couple of phases. So with phase 1, we would likely build enough for the first probably 3 modules. And then once we got to that 4th module, then we would do enough for those next 3 modules, right? So the site works, the parking would be done in probably 3 phases, phase 1, 4, and 7, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I will note, especially given the use of the parking space, or the expected use, I should say, I think, and of course there's other implications to putting through, having a variance attached to a development permit, I understand, but I think this would be a case where a variance, I think, would be fairly well accepted, at least from myself, and so that could be something to consider as well, is to consider a variance, or at least having the parking area that you don't expect to use frequently, have it be a permeable surface or something that's not quite a finished asphalt, to allow for just a bit more, a bit less impact to the storm drainage and other things around.
Sure.
Could be an opportunity there. I was curious if there's been any thought, because there are future developments potentially coming around it as well, if there's any thought to heat recovery infrastructure, and how there might be an opportunity to have some heat recovery from this facility, provide heating for future developments in the area. If there's, I know it's early on, and that would have to be a kind of a future consideration, but there might be some impacts in terms of what this site looks like overall.
I believe there's been some very high level discussion about the possibility of that, but as you alluded to, we sort of haven't gotten into that level of detail yet in terms of the mechanical design. But I suspect that would be part of the conversation for sure.
Great. Yeah. No, that sounds good. And then I believe it might have been pointed out, but I think I might have missed it. Is there an outdoor amenity area for staff as well?
There is. Maybe Chris, if you were able to pull that back up just quickly.
Sure.
Near the southeast corner.
So considering this relatively small number of staff, it's not a huge site, but it is a sort of what you would expect to see. Sorry, I'm struggling with zooming in. There we go. Just some benches, a seating area, an outdoor space, kind of immersing the staff in a little bit of a naturalized planted area, that sort of thing. So yes, a small little staff amenity space.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. That's great. I think that's actually, sorry, I do have one more comment. I guess it's also on the landscape side. Has the use of more, has it been considered for sound dampening? Has that been considered with the landscape design and considering kind of year-round evergreens and whatnot to help provide that benefit year-round?
I'll take an initial stab at that, and if any others weigh in, that's fine. So what I understand over the years is that there's a very minimal dampening effect from plant materials for sound. It's psychological. You don't see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. We do have a very generous planted area sort of around the entire periphery of the building. I can't guarantee how much sound attenuation that might produce, but it should block the visual and create a psychological barrier. I hope, and yeah, so.
Okay, and are they primarily evergreens around the perimeter? I know there's the Garry Oak Meadows.
It is. So it's predominantly a Garry Oak. It's sort of the character of the habitat is that Garry Oak. So we were trying to replicate that, but what we've ended up producing is a fairly even mix of deciduous and coniferous trees, just playing up the diverse side of things rather than say sound attenuation or something like that.
Right.
But if I mean, I can investigate the actual numbers of each species, but I think that's getting too far into the weeds for right now. But it's a decent mix.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. If perhaps it is more psychological. I'm not sure of the data behind it all, but I think it'd be worth kind of considering if there's an additional, and I mean certainly the visual effect as well. I think particularly for the residential properties, but yes, I know there's some things there. So I think those are all of my comments. So yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation and for going into all the details.
Great, thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the design team for the presentation. I'll just start with the fencing. So I see there's 3 different fence types, and it looks like most of the site is surrounded by fence type number 2, which is a perforated metal fence. And then fence type 3 is the chain link, which looks like it's only through the wetland. I didn't see where fence type 1 was located, but so yeah, my understanding is that there's a 8-foot fence around the perimeter, so that's pretty tall. Most pedestrians or people driving down the road probably won't even see the building, so they're just going to see the fence. They won't really see the planting behind the fence. It looks like the perforations are pretty small, so you could kind of peek through there, but I guess I've never seen a fence like this in real life, so I don't quite know how it will look and how transparent it is. It just looks a bit more opaque than like a chain link fence for sure from the drawing, but yeah, I'm kind of getting the impression people won't really see the building unless they're working there. So that's kind of informing my comments on the design. But it looks like the barbed wire would only be on the type 3 fence, which is the wetland. So the rest of the site does not have barbed wire. From what I understand. So, it feels like the type 3 barbed wire through the wetland seems unnecessary. The only thing I can think of is maybe you're worried that kind of little nook when the wetland's dry would become a homeless camp. And so you're just trying to block that off. and that's the only section with barbed wire. So you're worried people would climb that to set up a camp. But yeah, I think if people wanted to set up a camp in there, they would just cut through the chain link rather than be climbing over it. So I don't know if the barbed wire is really helpful in that location. As for keeping people out of the rest of the site, yeah, I guess just the detailing on the perforated steel panels could be non-climbable, so probably don't need to worry about barbed wire there, but there's no barbed wire there on the detail anyways. So yeah, maybe a smaller mesh on the chain link would make it less climbable, but yeah, I think people would just cut through it at the ground level if they wanted to get in there rather than climb over 8 feet every time they want to get in and out of there. So yeah, I guess in that case, maybe that fence through the wetland is actually protecting the wetland from getting trampled and by people going in there. So that's something for the panel to consider. I don't quite know the ecological value of this wetland, and if, you know, how important it would be to maintain wildlife connectivity in there, because a fence is a barrier to wildlife as well as people. So, but yeah, I don't quite have an idea of what the ecological value of this wetland is and how important it is to have wildlife connectivity there or not. But yeah, it seems like there was a staff comment to remove that chain link fence, and it seems unnecessary for the security of the data center, but maybe it could protect the wetland or stop camping in there. So I'm not like 100% opposed to the fence, although yeah, I think the chain link won't really be helpful there because it's easy to cut through a chain link fence. The parking. So yeah, I guess you're just trying to avoid a variance, but it sounds like the city and the applicant kind of know that 90 parking stalls is completely unnecessary. So I think that you know, just I do drive. I live in the area, so I drive by down East Wellington a couple times every week. And you know, the existing character is the low density rural residential close to the ALR. That's kind of the feel. So yeah, a data center is very different from that, but the rezoning was approved, so I can't really oppose that. But maybe I'm thinking, like, when I drive down there, I kind of see a bit of a cleared space between the road and then just a kind of a wall of trees along this property. So I think maybe something to consider would be a row of trees outside the fence between East Wellington Road and the fence, so that you're kind of screening the fence and the development. When people drive by, they're kind of feeling more that rural character rather than the fence of a industrial development. So in order to make room for a row of trees, maybe getting rid of that row of parking next to the south property line would free up the space to do that. Of course, you need to do the parking variance for that, but I think that's worthwhile just to better respect the existing character of that road in the neighborhood. And the outdoor amenity area, yeah, since there's not a lot of staff there, it doesn't have to be too elaborate, but I'm thinking maybe some of those little bench tables that some of the site furnishing suppliers make could be helpful to add to some of those benches. Just, you know, if someone's out there for their lunch break, they can have a little table to put their food or drink on while they're sitting there. Or, you know, if it's a nice day and they're working off a laptop, they maybe could go out there to do some work, get out of the building. So yeah, those little tables could be helpful to the employee amenity area. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Oh, just in general, yeah, the landscape plan, it's good to see all the stormwater management, green infrastructure stuff, bioswales. It's pretty much all native species, so Yeah, that all looked really nice. I guess maybe it's all hidden by the fence, so having some like a row of trees outside the fence, I think would be helpful. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Madam Chair, would it be okay if I just addressed one of the comments from
Go ahead, yeah.
Thank you very much. Just with regard to the suggestion around a row of trees between the parking area and East Wellington Road, I will note that and it was sort of unique in this case, given the circumstances. So none of our plans at this point, we haven't shown any landscaping that would actually be within the city right of way. And the reason for that is because there's still, in this case, so much unknown about exactly what's going to end up being built in terms of upgrades to East Wellington Road, whether there ends up being a roundabout at the southwest corner, a roundabout at the southeast corner. And so in discussions with the city, ultimately we felt it was best just to sort of we didn't want to show something that, may ultimately not come to pass, depending on what happens when the city makes decisions around the road networking. And so, but in general terms, obviously there will be frontage improvements along East Wellington Road. And there will be, as part of that, there would be landscaping between wherever the back of sidewalk ends up and the property line, which quite commonly or quite typically would include street trees. And so certainly there's potential there to introduce additional landscaping before you get to the sidewalk within the city right away.
Okay, sounds like you need to work with the city on that one. Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Alex, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation today. It's definitely an interesting building that's going to go in there. And it sounds like the first of many for a new industrial part of town. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to echo Jonathan's concerns with the fencing situation. It is kind of like a catch-22 how you have a fence bisecting a wetland, but at the same time you kind of need it to keep people out of there for when it dries up. And also the perforated steel fence, yeah, if it blocks the view of the building from the road, that's kind of a shame. One of my main questions, and I don't know if you spoke on this earlier in your presentation, so this is a data center. Is there some sort of backup power situation? Say, all the power goes off, big storm, something happens. Do you have backup power generators in the facility or?
Yeah, so redundancy would be built in primarily through the inclusion of generators on the site, as in association with each of the modules in the event of a power failure.
Okay, would that be like a battery powered generator?
I believe they're diesel powered, but I don't know that definitively.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. Hillary, would you like to go ahead?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, appreciate hearing the comments from the other panel members. I had similar concerns about the fence, and I don't think that there's any reason for it to go through the wetland, whether or not it has dry periods. Those are called vernal pools, and they're like very valuable natural areas. So I think sticking closer to the building to be able to avoid that would be great. But yeah, other than that, thanks to the panel for the comments, and that's it.
Thank you. And Hector?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't think I have anything more to add. I think the building it's a complex building on an interesting area that is going to become like a pretty light industrial area. So yeah, I think I appreciate all the comments from other members of the panel. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I don't have a lot to add either, but I just want to thank you for coming in and bringing a very interesting project. And as I think it was Angie mentioned, it's a very unique project here. We've not had this come before us before. So there's lots of questions and concerns and so on. I think I'm more concerned because there's residential properties across the street, other industrial properties. Like if we go to Duke Point area, it's all industrial in a certain area, and you're not going to be impacting residential areas. And for me, that's probably one of the biggest concerns there. I think the noise is going to be, especially at night, may impact a lot, because where I live downtown, even at 3 in the morning, if I wake up, I used to be able to hear the CN ferries come in and all the trucks unloading. And the acoustics, it all carries across a certain area. So the highway quiets down, that hum is going to continue to be there. And so that would be my one key concern. And I don't know what else you can do. I think you're making every effort you can under the circumstance for this kind of building to mitigate that. But it's the location that maybe is more the problem than anything else. You could be in another location, it wouldn't have quite so much impact on an established residential area. So that would be my one concern. In terms of form and character itself, I think it's it's a fine building, and I'm really happy also to see more industrial land opening up in Nanaimo. We definitely do need it. And your building itself, the design, the landscape, all of that fits very well in there, except for the comments about the fence through wetlands I'm concerned about as well. So I think that's, it's the issue of it just being a different kind of building and purpose planted in this neighborhood. And that's, our role here on the design panel is to consider the neighborhood within, the form and character within the context of the neighborhood. So that's something we have to take into consideration when we vote on this together and decide whether we want to see it through or how we feel about it. So I think that's probably, yeah. And I'd also agree if this is going ahead that reduce the parking if possible. I think, again, that would leave more green space. Or as I think Angie suggested, replace some of that pavement with permeable pavers, so then you meet both things. You get the parking allowance, plus you have some, you open up that space a little less pavement if it's not necessary. It's not the kind of building like a warehouse even might have few employees with one tenant, but then that tenant changes and there's more employees. I'm thinking this kind of building's never gonna, the employee numbers aren't gonna change much. And it's a one-purpose building that can't be really repurposed for anything else if that data center eventually doesn't, ends. So those would be my concerns for this project. So I think what we need to do with the panel is consider how we want to state this in terms of and how we feel about voting upon it. So I have a number of, I'm just going to go through the recommendations that I heard from the panel to start with, and then we can consider how we want to pose this as a motion. So I've heard consider adding solar panels on the site to help mitigate energy use. Consider the possibility of enclosing the cooling elements to reduce noise or possibly putting it below grade. Consider reducing the parking to maintain more green space or at least using permeable pavers. Consider adding a roof for water collection on the roof. Consider adding a green roof with some pollinator plants. Consider how materials can be reused through the different phases of the building. Consider possibility of heat recovery potential. Consider removing the chain link fence through the wetland. Consider adding a row of trees outside the fence to help shield the facility from the residential neighborhood. And consider adding some tables in the outdoor amenity area. So, panel members, did I miss anything there? Jonathan? Yes.
Yeah, so I guess another, maybe related to that chain link fence, one would be consider removing the barbed wire. If they do keep the fence, consider removing the barbed wire from the top.
Through the one through the wetland or all the barbed wire?
Well, I think only the wetland one has barbed wire, the rest of it doesn't.
That's correct.
Okay. And or the barbed wire, okay. And Marta, did you have something?
Yes. Just a thing, if we do sink the building into the landscape a little bit, then, and maybe we could create a berm, and then maybe the fence doesn't need to be so high, right? Because it'll be naturally protected by the berming. Maybe that would add a level of security to that site. So just to add on that, maybe.
How would you phrase it, that as a recommendation, if you wouldn't mind helping me?
It's not a moat, but something, I don't know.
Consider adding berming around the building, is that what you're talking about?
Berming, yeah, and then you can, that could be something, yeah. Or just excavating, yeah, and putting the building down lower and having the mechanical systems on the lower level. And then one more, only because it's always mentioned and nobody mentioned it this time, we could have bird-friendly glass.
Hillary, I think, did you wave your hand?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate, I think the panel's really given a comprehensive list of recommendations, so I really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
And Jonathan, you had another one?
Just based on what Marta just said, yeah, if we want to think more about the recommendations about sound reduction, yeah, sinking the building. I guess we also have to keep in mind that one of the development permit areas is the mining thing, so I don't know how that, I guess we can still make the recommendation, but there could be subsurface conditions that would limit what can be done underground just with mining in the area.
Yes, and
I think
geotechnical in general.
The big concern for us with dropping the building would be the fact that we're essentially on solid rock at grade. There's very little, it wouldn't be excavation, it would be blasting, which is, would be significantly challenging. We've tried as much as possible to sort of work with the existing topography in order to limit the amount of land alteration that would be required.
Thank you.
Do you want to leave that recommendation in then, Marta? Lowering the building?
Well, there's
It's
still
not
a way.
lines in that area?
I mean, it's still, I think the recommendation can stay for maybe not lowering the building, but moving the equipment onto a lower level. And then maybe we can provide a height variance and increase the building height so that we have a lower kind of level that's more enclosed that would service and allow the proper ventilation of that equipment. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you just essentially removing it from the rooftop where the sound would carry more, but just to bring it down to the.
So my second recommendation that I had, consider the possibility of enclosing the cooling elements to reduce noise.
Yeah.
So does that cover enclosing it, or do you want me to be more specific than?
Enclosing it and lowering it if possible to reduce the amount it carries. Because the higher it is, the more it would carry.
So consider the possibility of enclosing and lowering the cooling units into the building to reduce noise possible.
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay. So that was, I think I better go over those again. Okay, so consider adding solar panels on the site to help mitigate energy use. Consider the possibility of enclosing it and lowering the cooling units into the building to reduce the noise. Consider reducing the parking to maintain more green space or use permeable pavers. Consider adding a roof or water collection on the roof. Considering adding a green roof with pollinator plants. Consider how materials could be reused through the different phases of the building. Consider possibility of heat recovery potential. Consider removing the chain link fence and or the barbed wire through the on the top through the wetland. Consider a row of trees outside the fence to help shield the facility from the residential neighborhood. consider adding some tables in the outdoor amenity area. And then we don't really need the berming then, okay, and consider using bird-friendly glass. Does that cover it for everybody? Yes, Martha?
Sorry, one more thing. Data centers tend to be pretty private, and so I'm wondering if, just in terms of transparency, if the client would maybe commit to doing a regular scheduled ecological review that could just be posted online somewhere so that the city can ensure that there are no negative impacts on the ecology there. There's just a suggestion to, but that's not design related, so I'm just putting it out there. Thank you.
Don't know if we can fit that under design form and character.
Fair enough, thank you.
So, yeah, anyway. Okay, so do we have would somebody like to motion that we accept the project as presented with those recommendations? Or would you like to adjust that motion somehow? Is that suitable enough?
I just had one more comment on the recommendations. If we do want to say something about berming, like as far as attenuating sound through the landscape, berming is kind of the most effective way to do that. So there's some implications to that. Like if you have a berm around the perimeter of the site to reduce noise, it would affect your ability to retain existing trees since you're building up the land. But
I took out the berming thing because we went back to just lowering the cooling equipment into the building.
I think you mean building up though, right, Jonathan? Like you can actually build on top of that surface to create a berm.
Yeah, like that would be the most effective way to reduce noise from a landscape perspective would be through berms.
They'd have to be pretty high berms though.
Yeah, the height of whatever's making the noise.
Because if it's up near the roof, it's...
So yeah, I guess reducing the equipment to a lower level would more of an impact than that. So yeah, we can just leave out the berming then.
Okay. So I have here then 11 recommendations that I read out there. Does somebody want to make a motion that we accept it and vote on it? Angie, you're going to make the motion. Seconder, Alex, all in favor? Okay, so we don't have, let's see, I'm not seeing Hillary and Marta is not, are you voting against?
I'm voting against.
I'm not allowed to vote.
Oh, yes, that's right. Sorry, I forgot. So, okay, so we have all approved except for one. Okay. So, all right. I think that's it. Thank you for this presentation and answering all our many difficult questions. Appreciate your time and effort on it. So.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
So yes, we've got a second presentation this evening for property on Caledonia Street, and Caleb Horn again will introduce it. Go ahead, Caleb.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The second item on tonight's agenda is development permit number 1375 at 210 Caledonia. This is a split zone property. It is currently under 3 zones: medium density residential R8, 3 and 4 unit residential R5, and residential corridor Core1. But I'll note that the property or the location of the development is entirely on the R8 zoned portion of the property. The relevant design guidelines are the General Development Permit Area Design Guidelines and the Newcastle and Brecon Neighborhood Plan Urban Design Guidelines. The proposal is for a 6-story multifamily residential building with 98 dwelling units. There are a few variances requested as part of this development permit, which I'll just quickly highlight. Include the minimum front yard setback variance, rear yard setback variance, maximum building height variance, maximum retaining wall height, minimum required landscape treatment level, as well as the minimum watercourse setback as measured from the Millstone River. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. And who's presenting this evening?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So that's me, Ruben, and Raymond, and I
Okay.
will let him. I'll share the screen and I will let him start.
Yes, go ahead.
Ruben will actually present, but I'm just give you a little bit of background since I've worked on the project a little bit longer and introduce everybody. Okay. Just a sec. There we go. I'll try to be quick because obviously it's a very complex project too. So you guys got two complex projects at the same time. All the different people that were involved in the project are in the lower left of the screen. I won't carry everybody out. You probably know many of them. This is one of the few projects actually where we ended up having structural and geotechnical engineers early on in the project. This project actually is the third client for me on this site, and I didn't realize till I looked at my notes that it's actually been 20 years since the first time I looked at the site. The projects have gotten steadily bigger and higher density just because of the difficulty of dealing with such a site. So the ownership group, who Vanya is online with as well, they own the Riverstone project just across the river there, which they did, I think, in about 2021 or completed around then. And we'll go from there. So we'll go on the next. Some of the images on here are a little bit different. This is a project that kind of was on the shelf for a bit, and then with the changes in the building code and with the other projects that Platinum Property Groups have been working on, have been all very challenging structurally and stuff. In this particular site, it got put back on schedule with this project, mainly because of the seismic concerns and geotechnical issues related to the site. It was, for this particular site, when the engineers looked at it, it was probably about a 75% more increase in the cost of dealing with the seismic considerations. And the structural component of a building like this is probably about 20%. So it has a huge impact. And so we're in a bit of a rush to get it through. It's a very complex project. These things take a long time. And so we decided to move forward, or they wanted to move forward. And so we wanted to submit early on before we kind of fully developed everything. So everything's a bit fluid. And there's a lot of elements in the design and the considerations that some are kind of contrary to each other. Some will impact one or the other to improve them. So I guess just be considerate, I guess, as we're working through this. The big thing is a lot of the land that's outside of our control. It's kind of a quasi land, and it's always been as a quasi land. So as far as we know, it's really provincially part, but there's all sorts of other considerations, whether it's First Nations, fisheries, all sorts of things like that. So everybody's been doing a very good job, and we're happy with the consultants. And I think one quick thing was Patrick, who's with Herald Engineering, I think Ian Bauer is in because Patrick might not have made it back from his meeting out of town. So we'll go to the first slide, I guess. These are just slides that was before, and hopefully you can see my cursor, if that's helpful. This is Riverstone Place. This is when, just before they started construction here, they had some aerial photos done. So these are a little bit old, but it kind of gives you a really good idea because a lot of the leaves are not on the trees yet, because otherwise you really can't see anything on the site. So the site is along here and goes up to the road and all the way down, but it doesn't actually touch the river. This is kind of like what I say is the no man's zone. Just a little bit of history on that, and there's a lot of described on there already, but there was an old sawmill. Here's the power station here. You can see the remnants, not in this particular photo, maybe over here. That was there. I think the second power station for Nanaimo, and there's old stave pipes and stuff, and a lot of the wood piping that you'll see in the landscape concept that they show those were really related all the way, the expansion of the dams through Bowen Park and all the way up to Westwood Lake was actually part of all of this power that was coming down here. So it's got quite the historical context to it. The big thing is that I guess the objectives from the client is they were very interested in the property. It's a beautiful property. If anybody's had a chance to go down, unfortunately, it's very challenging geotechnically, topography. Obviously, we're always concerned about riparian issues. We've worked on the project up on Bradley Street, which hopefully should start construction soon. We're still waiting for the building permit for that. but it has very similar issues and I guess approach to how we look at these kind of projects. I myself live in a riparian area as well in town, so a lot of the considerations are what we deal with on a daily basis living in such lands. So I think I will, yeah, Ruben can press the next button. This gives you just a really quick look at the context of the road and the landscape. Again, as you can see, it's very colorful sometimes because there's a lot of deciduous trees on this site. But the big challenge is obviously to have some nice quality housing, not determined exactly yet whether it's rental or condo. So we want to be a little bit flexible with that. And obviously, you know, the cost of construction, the tariffs, all these things are just having an impact on any of these kind of larger projects. Geotechnically, the land is really bad in the area that's kind of over here. A lot of this was infill from the industrial development. There's actually an old road that runs through. It's actually asphalted, but it's kind of mainly grown over. That was going down to the power station below. But essentially what kind of nukes one of the earlier projects was it's about 2 stories of bad fill in there. So in order to build anything on this, we essentially had to go down 2 stories anyways. And this site and the development of the site plan, which we'll show in a sec just really quickly, is trying to move the building as close to the road as possible, even though just the way that most of you are probably familiar how the riparian areas are done, that there's just a little bit of history in the photo there. Great ribbon. So this is the old site here of the power station, and there should be another one that we can't quite see in there. And the riparian area kind of runs along here tight to our building. So we've been pushing the building back. That's why the building is really close to the sand. It kind of follows the contours quickly. Here gives you an idea of almost the same number of units, the footprint of this building versus this building here. And it kind of, we're essentially from an environmental point of view and a riparian point of view, this is a net gain kind of project. So we're really actually improving the condition of this way better than what it is. And the other issue is obviously we're all aware of social, I won't say social disorder. I don't know if that's a nice way to saying it, but just street people and just the damage that's been happening on the site. And we're probably, any of us locals have been around for a while of knowing, you know, all the social unrest, I guess. You know, people fighting, burning fires, destroying the riparian area and all sorts of stuff, firing guns, the whatever. So that's something that the neighborhood association is really hopeful that something will happen along here. And like I say, a lot of it is along here. And Kate will probably talk about that a little bit more as we get into that. And that just gives you the split of the zones. We didn't consolidate it all because obviously the cost is obviously the developer owners are always cognizant of costs of everything. And it's so difficult to predict what all these different things are. So that's why we want to be quite flexible with what we do. And one of the reasons why they didn't get rezoned together, because obviously that would trigger a bunch of other off-site stuff that would probably might cause concern for that particular project. I did work on this other house over here to fix it up at one point or legalize it. But yeah. That just gives you just a brief idea. Here's maybe you can see a little bit better in green is the site and the 2 areas where the actual power station was, and this was another area in here, and the stave pipe kind of went up here. And as you can see, just really, really briefly, is the riparian area along this line, which actually isn't on our property. And because the way the city of Nanaimo's 30-meter setback is measured, this is this line along in here, which we probably have gathered and follow. So there is the pedestrian crossing here, and this is the other site that's there. There's the German Cultural Center over here. And the road starts to get kind of steep going this way, and it's kind of flat. It's quite popular, people biking and walking. And it's obviously very popular with street people too, unfortunately. So we weren't able to use any of this because of that. So we kept the building on here, which is kind of a natural platform of the site. And this is the area where you see that the road go down along here. There's actually another secondary road along there. So this was a propane storage facility up here at one time. They still were using these buildings. And that shall be very quick. So we will go through, there's a couple of things, I guess, just staff comments, maybe just so that Ruben, you understand a little bit when Ruben's talking about it, was we did look at, and we probably will do, is there was a one staff comment about the bicycle parking inside the building. And maybe Ruben can park. I'll let him show it later, perhaps. But the idea is that a lot of these services are, because they're all tied in over here, is we're probably gonna actually bring it up at grade. We just didn't want to show it yet. And that'll be, so people can literally walk out the door and just walk along here and get out with their bikes to go up and down, as opposed to going up in the elevator and, you know, hurting the vehicles and stuff like that, the common areas. So this is the area, and Ruben will describe it more, of where the driveway is that goes down from one story to the other to deal with the two-story business, in order to keep the footprint of the building very tight and against the road. And this is kind of the main entrances, which is basically where the road is level with the platform of this portion of the site here. The other things is we did look at the horizontal. We were looking at that, and we had discussions prior to getting the staff comments. So we'll show that elevation a little bit more, how it was broken up and dealt with. There's some challenges with stepping the building back. There's another staff comment of, could we push the building back, or at least the upper floors back? We don't really want to do that because again, the seismic considerations with this and structural. So we'll probably see in the future, once we get out of the exemptions of projects following the 2018 building code back into 2024 building code, is we're going to see very rectangular and very boxy buildings. And so structurally, the building is literally a box. And then how we've dealt with dealing with the height of the building and the massing has more to do with the exterior of the building to frame out the lower 4 stories. So that's kind of our token little bit. A lot of the stuff to do with the neighborhood, Brecon neighborhood, Newcastle design guidelines didn't really think about this site ever being developed, or even Terminal Avenue for that matter, where our office is. So it's a little bit difficult. I think maybe that was the driving idea behind that consideration. Again, because there's a lot of other things going on with the site, the color palettes of the building, we've just kind of been talking about it back and forth. The ownership is quite involved in that kind of thing. But to give you an idea that it can be colorful, if you look at the color scheme that was for Riverstone there, I'm not saying it's going to be the same exactly, but it's a very colorful scheme, which was picking up all the fall colors on the site along there, and the salmon and everything else. There's a lot of fish along here. There's a lot of birds along here, and Sarah is here as well. We'll probably let her talk last if she wants to have a little bit, or at least she's here to answer any particular questions that Kate may discuss as well. Kate and Sarah work quite closely together. Sarah was on the project many years ago, much like me. So, and the bird-friendly thing. So maybe it wasn't quite clear on the drawings that the glass guards are translucent, so you don't have the issue of clear glass or whatever. Again, I live on a 4-story building on the lake, and we get lots of birds, and cats are the worst thing, but killing birds by buildings is the next crazy thing. So there are bird-friendly glass, but we just have to be careful because there's obviously a cost related to that. So I think we've tried to deal with that in many other ways. So the other thing with the bird-friendly thing is light. Light is we want to stay at a lower light spectrum, like a warmer white, than a higher white, which attracts birds. And also because we have a cat, we have very bright colors for a cat to be bird-friendly. So that's much like that. They have a different scene spectrum than the rest of us do. And that's part of the reason why the driveway, in order to get enough parking and keep the building footprint really tight, was it's actually totally enclosed in here. I know it makes it probably more bulky looking than just a road driveway going down, but it does have some advantages, again, from security perspective of street people not getting into the building, getting into cars or anything like that. But it also keeps the vehicle lights, which are going around 180 degrees, so it's not reflecting into the natural environment. And perhaps Kate might talk a little bit about the lighting, but again, we want very strong downlights, shielded lights, and not have very much light at all. So that's the trick. And then as the vegetation grows up, it'll become a lot more dark. I guess we like to keep it dark, but safe enough for people to be feel secure. So, and the rooftop equipment, I think we've shown a little bit about that. It's always a challenge when we're electrifying buildings where we put the heat pumps and the condensers, but we got a few different spots and probably get divvied up amongst the building a little bit. Because again, a common approach now with the new building code, dealing with trying to keep dealing with the heat dome consequences, so to speak, to have a cool room at least in every room. And obviously that's something that everybody's getting accustomed to for the newer multifamily buildings that we see being built. There's a couple different ways, but I don't know if I have enough time to get into those little nitty-gritty details. So I'll let Ruben go because I will take too much of our time.
Proceed with the presentation, and I'll touch upon some of the staff comments that we have received so far and that we have tried to address. Here's just I won't go through all these numbers, but just to summarize, it's a 6-story residential building with two underground parking levels. We have a mix of units mostly composed of 1 bedroom plus dens, and as well some studios and 2 and 3 bedrooms. And we are pursuing a maximum FAR within the bonuses that we are allowed and the zoning. So we are using the underground parking bonus as well as the tier 1 and 2. And we do note here our variances. We're happy to answer questions about them. I won't go through them right now, but and then we do have we provide the parking required for the 98 units. So we'll go through the floor plans. This is the lowermost parking level. So mostly parking. We have the elevator lobby at the center and 3 stairs. We do have electric motorcycle scooter parking at this end. And we at the moment we show a bicycle storage here, and that was one of the comments from the city. And as Raymond said, we are pondering, and I'll just quickly go 2 floors up. We do have a storage locker at this point here, which could perhaps serve as a bicycle storage instead. So we would flip the 2 spaces with a convenient access from the outside. So that's something we will work on. So yeah, we tried, if you see, oh, sorry about that. So still LB2. The parkade has a little shift in the driveway. So we tried to resolve this area by shifting some parking stalls to make the driving more comfortable. And here you can see the ramp going up to the next level. And we do have a exit here, a door for maintenance of the exterior landscape. This is the floor above. So we do have, as Raymond was saying, we are blocking this wall so that we don't have lights shining on the fauna that exists here. And we do have a natural ventilation towards the inside of the splendid area. On this level, we have our utility room, and here's the entrance to the parkade, the overhead door, and we do have a garbage enclosed room with easy access here from the road, and where some space here available for the vehicles to turn around. And we have the visitor parking on the outside of the parkade, as well as bicycle short-term spots. Sorry about that. Here's the L1 where we have our entrance to the building. We have loading parking stalls. We have some bicycle parking, and this entrance has opportunity for sitting so that someone can wait here. And then we do have this portion of the site. It's basically planted with new trees, and it has an opportunity for people to gather in this seating area, but it's a secured space for the use of the residents. You can see so we have the entrance lobby. It's basically a corridor with units towards both sides. And we have this connection then to the back of the building with an indoor amenity and also an outdoor amenity, and then a ramp connection to this viewing platform, which is it's a good let's say, a special feature of this project, which could be a place for socializing and relaxing, which Kate from Landscape can talk more about. And we do make good use of exterior patios for the ground floor units, both towards the front of the building and to the back. I won't go through much detail through the floor plans here. You can see from L2 to L4, and you can see here the green roof over the canopy entrance. And this is the L5 floor plan. So L5 and L6 are set back at the very ends. You can see that the units are shorter at those ends with generous decks for enjoying the views. Same with L6. And now we can go a bit through the perspectives. So this is an aerial view from where basically let's say the other project, Riverstone, is. You can see here that we show here the environmental fence, which goes along the spia at this point and then follows our property line. To reduce the impact of the height of our retaining walls, we are raising. You can see a different shade of green here. We are raising within our property the grade so that our retaining walls are more gradually stepped. You can see here the exit to the outside from the lobby area and the connection to this viewing platform. And even though we have retaining walls at the back, they will eventually be quite covered by the vegetation which is existing and also planted within our property. You can see over here just let's say a mock-up of what could be the rooftop makeup air unit screened as requested, and we also have just made the glazing a bit more. It's translucent, so to protect the birds from impacting it. This is another aerial view. We can see the other existing building across the river, and this portion that will have a new landscape. And we can see basically the only direct neighboring building is this, I believe, 4-story townhouse building over here. Oh, just before I continue, one of the comments from staff was also to try to break up the horizontal extension of the building. And so for that, we did have this overhang all the way along the building, but we were able to make up a little break here at the middle by recessing the lobby portion of the wall and making a break in the overhang, so it does feel more not so monotonous, the whole extension of the building. And we also set back the overhang here at the ends of the building. This is the entrance of the building. As I described, it has place for seating. This would be a potential place for where the tier signage would be placed. We did accentuate this ground floor level with a different texture that we show as brick at the moment to give it a more welcoming and warm feeling to this space. And here's the gate towards the common private garden over here. There's the building name is supposed to be the current. There might be some design elements that we might incorporate later that might have to do with the current inspiration from the river that we are in, or even the current that is associated with the power houses with the historical heritage of this site. This is a view from that common garden area. We can see the individual patios here on the left with buffered with the planter with vegetation, and then opportunity for seating over here. it is possible that we might consider having some community gardening. So this could be one of the spots, but it's something that we are still considering. And here we can see the break in the facade by recessing the lobby wall and making a break in this overhang. Here, even though we don't have recessed the two upper floors, it does give that feeling by having this overhang of the upper roof setback. This is the entrance to the parkade. We do show the opportunity to use some kind of screening that could be a green wall or even any other decorative element just to soften the height of these walls at this corner. Here we have a view of the viewing platform at the back with an arbor to create some pleasant space for sitting and some tables where people could actually use it for eating or just socializing. Here we have a view from the top of the Caledonia Avenue. You can see that even though our building is 6 stories, it doesn't really protrude much from the continuing buildings at the top of the road. And this portion of the building will also, the visual impact will be softened by the trees once they grow a little bit. And as you can see here, we can't see the rooftop equipment, but we can still screen it. And we are looking at where to place other equipment such as the condensing units. This is another view just to show the neighboring building. There is a comment about from staff about the overlook from this building to the next. I will probably let Kate explain reason a bit more about this this item. It's not like a direct overlook, as you see here. That building is a bit more back than ours, but I will let Kate develop on that.
I'll just interrupt with that. They have a short fence and it's really treed in their backyard, so they literally don't go much further than the posts that you see. There's a little, I don't know, maybe 10 feet beyond that, and then it's fenced on their side. It's actually already fenced along between our two properties. So it's mainly the principal. There's 4 units there, I think 5 illegally now. I'm not sure if that got fixed, but the owners of that lived up on the upper floor, so that was where they were. One of the things, I guess maybe I didn't mention it, is just the beauty of the site is that you got the sound of the water there, and so it totally drowns out the highway, Terminal Avenue, and it's just very present. And you got the natural kind of solar bowl in there because it's south-facing. It's a really different microclimate than anywhere else, and it's such a hidden gem in Nanaimo. So, yeah, I'd like to see something. Make better use of it, I guess. So.
And this is just a very simple solar shadow study that we did. As you can see here, there's barely no impact in the summer and spring, especially, let's say, we're basically only worried about the neighboring building over here. And it's possible, and you can see here for the winter that our building casts some shadow over this building, but it wouldn't be more than what a normal building just casts shadow on the other one, since we start our building at a lower level. And you can see here up to some point of the sun angle, then the building will still receive sunlight. And going through our elevations, so there's the comment from design panel to consider a different color palette, which we will work on. But the general idea is to use darker colors on the bottom 4 floors and lighter colors on the upper 2, so that we blend the floors with the ground, and also try to make the 2 upper floors not as noticeable as striking to people who are walking by. You can see over here at the bottom our intended use for some kind of could be a green wall on this wall that is close to the sidewalk, or some decorative element.
I will say that as Ruben's changing courses, that if you notice closely at the drawings, that the road needed to get wider. The city wants to make the road wider near the bottom as we come down the hill of Caledonia, that the sidewalk, actually about 80% of the sidewalk's on our space. So it's tightened it up from when we were trying to work the other way of trying to pull the building closer. And obviously we want to stay, the building also comes close to the riparian area. There's the one spot on the other corner opposite of this facade that that's what was rearranging a lot of the insides of the building. So all these things keep changing as we're looking at different components. So yeah.
Yeah. And this is just a general mood board at the moment with like earth-like colored hardy panels and hardy siding, the use of brick at the bottom floor, and then we have wood in our soffits and columns, and then the concrete and possibly the green wall system. This is the south elevation. So as you can see here, these retaining walls will be quite covered by the vegetation that will be added. And you can see the 2 upper floors, they are recessed, but we were still able to provide decks to all the units. And you can also have an idea that even though the building is 6 floors, it doesn't really go beyond the height of the existing trees that are here, just besides the train tracks. So that's that. Here's the east elevation. At the moment, and now I will let Kate also develop on this item, we show a green screen system here at this curved wall, which is the ramp between the levels of the parkade. But the system in a curved wall might be a little more challenging, and we might actually end up not needing it throughout the entire extension, since we are also planting new trees.
There's a lot of trees on here, so you shouldn't actually see almost any of the retaining walls, but Kate can talk about that more. So, which is for us to render as we're working on the model, we omit a lot of the trees. So,
and you can see at the back this is an estimate, but we believe that the tree line is roughly at the same height of our proposed building. This is the north elevation. You can see here the viewing platform with the arbor, and then there is an extra exterior exit here for safety, and the recessed upper floors. And that's it from our end. Raymond, do you want to add anything else before we go to civil?
No. So we can go to civil, and then landscape can talk quite a bit more, I guess. Yeah. And at the very end, we'll just if there's something Vanya wants to highlight a little bit more from Putnam Properties, we'll give her an opportunity. And same with Sarah. So,
okay. So then I would invite Ian to just briefly explain the civil design.
Ruben, I don't know if Ian is on the call right now.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We'll go to landscape next.
Let's go to landscape then. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I will let Kate proceed. Kate, we can't hear you.
Sounds good though. We could. Sarah could talk if she wanted to.
So Caleb, it looks like she's dropped out, and should we want to come back into the meeting?
Yeah. Okay. Nobody likes us, I guess. So.
May I have a question, Madam Chair?
Sure. While we're waiting.
How long are we going to keep going with this meeting? This is a very complex project, and I'm pretty sure we can talk another hour. So, is it something that we can put in the next agenda to continue with this project?
I don't know. That's the city's. That's kind of the city's call.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. My apologies. I was sitting here patiently, but I didn't test my audio.
We just had a question from Hector about the length of the meeting at the moment. So, just Caleb, I think we need to continue. You've already presented, so I think we need to just continue.
Yes, I think the chair, that would be at your discretion if you wanted to request that they do come back. I would note that the next scheduled design panel meeting does already have 2 applications tentatively scheduled. So it is at your discretion if you wanted to continue at this time.
Yeah. So, Hector, are you okay? You can keep going?
Personally, I'm not okay, but let's just keep going.
Yes, okay.
Let Kate talk, so yeah.
Go
Maybe
ahead.
it'll help in your discussions.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to, okay, you can see my screen. I'm going to try to keep it brief. I think thank you, anyway, thank you for your attention, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. I think the architects have done a good job at showing you the building and the landscape around. I'm just going to speak to sort of one important thing about what we were trying to do with the landscape. So as you heard, so overall, the landscape takes its inspiration, as always it does, from its ecological and then also its industrial history of the site. And so this is located, as you know, adjacent to Millstone River, an important lowland riparian forest in the city of Nanaimo. And so our approach is really a riparian forest restoration and environmental enhancement project. That's sort of how we've approached the landscape. And this is important because of where the property sits. So as you know and have heard, the whole development property is really in this 30-meter environmental setback area. And so because of that, we are to mitigate the impacts of the environment. So the building is out of the SPIA, the 15-meter, but we're in the 30-meter environmental setback. So to mitigate the negative impacts of this project, a vegetation management plan is implemented that goes along with it. And this management plan will transform the disturbed landscape within the ESA into a functional riparian ecosystem. And I'm just going to quickly show you. So this image here, you can see the hardscape development, and then you can see we are approaching this site with a 3 sort of tiered management strategy. I won't go into details, but the area all around the building and within our development sort of footprint, we consider this a vegetation management zone. And our whole approach is to make it functional habitat. So to make sure we have plants for pollinators, for insects, to increase the biodiversity. So that is really important, and that really sort of focused the plant palette and the design. And I just wanted to sort of emphasize that. And then I think in doing that, we are during construction, the site, we are going to be removing 83 trees. We have a total parcel area of 6.63 hectares. So we have a responsibility to replace the trees with 63. We are proposing 126. And we have a diverse mix of conifers. You can see in the graphics, sort of, I think you can sense what we're implying is conifer and deciduous. And we have about a 40% conifer, 60% deciduous, sort of reflecting the character of the site. There is a lot of large deciduous trees on site, and we wanted to maintain that character as well. And I think Ruben nicely highlighted the sort of the usable outdoor spaces. We have the viewing deck here, number 1, that looks out over the river and capitalizes on the unique ramp to the parkade. What's I hope will be very interesting is we were able to keep the center open, and we're able to have trees at grade growing up through that. So I hope that will help sort of buffer the views and experience of this area for the building and the residents in the building. And then you can see we have generously planted our property area with as many trees, large trees, big leaf maples, Doug firs. So we're really going, over time, this is really going to fill in, and you're not going to see that sort of base structure of the building, the retaining walls and the sort of terraced planters as well. The same with this corner up here along Caledonia. We've really brought back in the vegetation that had previously been removed, and it's going to really help this building integrate into the site. And I think I'm just going to leave it there, because I feel like the architects did a great job of showing you the site. You can understand that it's challenging. The topography is very interesting and unique, but in a way the topography works in our favor because of the scale of our building. From the residential side here, we're really nestled down low, and we're able to utilize the trees and vegetation we're putting in here to help mitigate the scale of our building to these smaller residentials on this side. And then our only other sort of views are from across the river, and that will be through existing vegetation to our very densely planted sort of areas in front. I'm going to leave it there, and I suppose Ruben did comment that I would comment on a couple of things. It's my preference to not use sort of a green wall or green screen. I prefer for us to use the trees and vegetation to help screen and mitigate the scale of those walls. But if, there's potential for something on this ramp in this zone, maybe we will have a small portion of green screen sort of growing structure for vines at this pinch point where I'm not able to plant. But my preference is to use the plantings to screen. And you'll notice a few discrepancies. The architects have continued to evolve the design, so there's a few things that don't match up, but the general character intent of what we're showing is still the general character and intent of the project. Okay, thank you very much. I will leave it there and happy to answer any questions as they may come up.
Great, thank you, Kate. I had a little thought here. I think, yes, you're right, Hector, that it's a complicated project here, and I want to give it its due. I just want to hear from the other panel members if you want to stick this out. I think we're going to probably end up going up to 8 o'clock or later. How you feel about that, or would you like to adjourn? And if these guys, they've done their presentation, and what we do is if they came back, we would just use that time to give our feedback in another meeting. But that would mean probably adding 3 projects to our next meeting. Can I just get a bit of feedback from the panel on this? Hector, you were concerned because I think you probably have.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have concerns, and I feel it would be unfair if I just give my opinion without maybe having like a longer conversation. Because right now I don't even understand how we allowing such a big building within the 30-meter setback of the riparian setback. I think the massing is just absolutely too big for the area. And I agree. I think the architect and the landscape are trying to do like a great job. But as it is stand, without any longer conversation, I cannot support the project. So that's the reason. Is like if we want to have like a longer conversation, I would appreciate if we have like more time to do it.
Mhm.
But like if we don't engage into like a longer conversation, yeah, I cannot support the project as it is.
Okay. Jonathan, Alex, Angie, where are you at with this? Would you like to, we could break and come back, give you some time to think about it. I had some concerns about it as well. So I'm thinking we're looking at a bit longer conversation here.
Okay, either way, but I understand Hector's concern, so maybe it's better to break.
Come back the next time. Caleb, could you maybe weigh in on this, please? We don't usually do this, and I apologize to you guys. You had to wait for the previous one. Took quite a long time, and I think everybody's pretty tired and I want to give it its due. So
I think a chair just might be appropriate then to make a motion to adjourn or to table this item and have it return at an upcoming meeting.
Okay, so if we can have a motion. Does somebody want a motion that we return with this at another meeting? Hector, you want to make that motion?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Seconder. Jonathan. Okay. All in favor. So my apologies, folks. I know you are